So, hello, my name is Lucy Robertson. I'm at Heriot-Watt University as assistant professor, as I said before. And I am still quite new to, well, not playing with materials, but maybe researching in that way. And yeah, and this is very much an early stage project that I started really in the summer. So it really is quite fresh. It's not necessarily a new idea, but it really does have parallels to the previous presentation because it's about encouraging students, designers, ourselves as researchers to look at waste first before we look at anything else as a material. And I've kind of, well, I'll talk about it, but I've got a couple of research questions that I'm still looking at. I mean, obviously, we're all still looking at in terms of our research, but I haven't answered them, just to be transparent. And I'm still, looking to answer them. And in a way, I'd like to collaborate, and I think that talk, I love this idea of the box possibilities. I talk about a sweetie shop and it's coming up. But yeah, I just love that box possibilities. And we have those in our workshops. And I also really like the idea of this hidden waste. So I'm definitely borrowing / referencing those in the paper that eventually will come out of this for me. So yeah, so I was looking at a couple of research questions, and this very much is a small project, a small kind of side project of mine, because my main research was really looking at interactive textiles for well-being. But I kind of thought, while making those interactive textiles, how am I making them and what am I using and what are these materials about and where are they coming from and all that sort of stuff. So I was questioning, I suppose, the values of myself as a designer, and then also as a lecturer and a educator, how our students are considering this as well. So I wanted to build a resource really of materials, and I'll sort of define my understanding of materials because I'm a textile designer, but I'm not thinking just about fabrics. I'm thinking about composites, plastics, anything and everything, rust, maybe natural materials from leaves to raw fibers, everything is really kind of under this. And the second research question, which I'm yet to really explore properly, and I'd love to do a range of workshops on this, but what, using this resource of materials of like this box of possibilities, and later you'll see my sweetie shop, how we then implement that in our teaching, in our research, and in our making generally, and make it more of a norm. And obviously, and I will talk about them, there's lots of designers that are using this already, that are looking at waste. But it's still, especially for our students, and that's why I love this idea of hidden waste that was just talked about, especially for our students, it's still the easiest thing to go to a shop and buy a material. So how do we sort of change behaviour, I suppose, is what it's looking at. And how do we market waste, or however we want to call it? I really liked before, I think it was second material or second life material. So yeah, I've still not quite defined, is waste the right word? I think it's up for debate. And then where this research kind of sits, I suppose. So we've all heard probably this kind of stat around at the beginning of a product, really in its design stage. So as designers, creatives, researchers, it's on us to think about its environmental impact. And that just doesn't just mean using a waste material. It also means thinking about its end of life or its reusability. And again, this morning, someone talked about its repairability. So I really like all these kind of parallels that are coming together. And just it is very much the ethical kind of approach to thinking about new or reinventing existing products. And then it's also inspired by Katie Tregeddon, who talks about that we have a legacy of 200 years of take, make and waste, and that actually the resources we need are in landfill. They're no longer in the ground. We don't need to make more. We've got loads. They're in landfill. We need to work out how to process them, how to clean them, how to use them, reuse them, reinvent them, and how to make them circular. And by recategorizing waste as a material, not a fact, we can slowly bend that into some sort of circular process. And for me, I suppose this was inspired during my PhD, which looked at creating things with communities. And while I was in a particularly special community in the Outer Hebrides, we started to find all this beach waste, fishing lines, ropes. And in fact, I have a bag full next to me from earlier. And I started to look into this waste and kind of just what effect it's maybe having on our beaches. And I started to get a little bit obsessed. This particular beach, I found a purple rope. It was very exciting. So the colours that you can get and the use that you can have from that as well. So this is kind of where it came from. There's just so much of it as well, and it's all washing up. It depends on the streams and the currents. So different beaches are more full of beach waste than others. And obviously there's not just rope, there's lots of other things wash up on our beaches, some of them absolutely disgusting. And these guys, Surfers Against Sewage, who are based in the UK, they collect a lot of that waste, mostly to put into landfill and sort of distribute, I suppose. And I'd really love to challenge, what our students could do with what we could do with it, and how, in tandem we could be cleaning up the planet while creating. And this isn't a new idea. I mean, it does exist. Other people are doing it. And I suppose it's coming from me embedding it within my own practice and my own teaching, and really reaching out to other researchers and saying, how do we make this a reality? How do we push this forward? Make it a norm. So there's lots of beautiful images of rope. And this is some of the kind of things that we made with it. And again, even when I was making these, now I reflect on it and I think, right, cool, what's the end? Where does that go next? And it was a very durable, this was actually a craft bomb that a dementia-friendly community made with me. And the idea was that the flowers actually do make sound as well, so they have a little interaction bit within them, but that's a by the by. But yeah, where does this go now, and how does it get processed? What happens next? These are all still questions that I'm challenging, I suppose, myself, my work, my research, my students with. But in a way, yeah, the beach rope, it's very durable. It'll last forever, pretty much. So it's permanent decoration for outdoors. But yeah, these are some of the things that maybe I made with that initial waste that I found. So kind of going back to this project and the research question, how do we build a learning resource of materials and kind of help our students consider waste at the beginning of their projects? So I kind of went about this by making a material library. Again, it started in the summer, so it's still quite fresh, but I challenged myself to collect a material a day for 100 days. I'm going to be transparent, I've got 90. I stopped at 90 days and I just need to do that last 10. But I really wanted to have really interesting materials and not just any old material. And it had to be waste. It had to be something that either wasn't going to be used again, or I found, or whatever. It had to be kind of categorised as not bought. And it was inspired by the Institute of Making, who have a material library. And I just love these couple of quotes from them, that they've gathered it from sheds, labs, grottos, repositories, and that it allows the users, the designers, whoever needs to think in a material way about the relationships between materials and tools and how we make with them. So I set up a WordPress, there is 90 materials on that, and I started to sort of assign descriptors around recyclability, or how it's made, where it's from, where I found it. And that QR code's not fully showing, but that would take you to the waste/found material library. And I wanted it to be digital and physical, so the students could handle it on campus, but also so that other researchers and designers could work with it and imagine with it, I suppose. And for workshops, it could be a digital resource as well. It's morphed into a waste materials store, which I've started on campus here, which is, again, why I love that box of possibilities. Within this, I just wanted to set up. So scrap stores exist across the UK, and I imagine across different places in the world. And I wanted to set up a on-campus one, but instead of it being anything about buying, it's all about stocking, swapping, and asking for help. So students can stock it. They can bring things like toiles, that they're maybe never going to use again, and populate boxes full of goodies. Sketchbooks could be left behind. This kind of thing with students where things do get left, work gets left on campus. How do we categorise that and reuse it? They can swap. So they could bring a bunch of bottle caps along and swap it for some salvage. So again, it's not about exchanging money, it's about exchanging materials. Or what I'm trying to get some of my MAs to do, because they're doing different projects with different things that they want to find or gather, is ask for help. So just, ask your fellow students and the staff to start to gather certain materials that you are looking at. So it's a bit of crowdsourcing as well. So that's kind of, so far, the solutions I've come up with for research question 1, which is around how we create possibilities, how we create thinking around materials and gather that material for our students and staff and for ourselves. And then the second one, which I'm very much still trying to answer, but I've got a few literature examples that we can look at, is what we then make with that. How does that access to, and maybe change of thought around material, how does it give us the information we need, the things we need to apply different making processes and start to really understand different materials? So just a really simple example here of knitting with some PVC kind of tubing, and then starting to maybe reimagine that on the body or in an interior context, or it could be as a textile sample, it could be as a fashion accessory, whatever it is. I'm kind of looking for students and designers and researchers to reimagine and play. It's all about play. So some examples of things that do exist already, and borrowing from all sorts of disciplines. So this is another How It What research project, the K-brick, and it's made of construction waste, and it comes in all sorts of funky pigments, and it's just a really exciting kind of project. Recently won the DZine Sustainability Award as well, the public one. So just, taking inspiration from these different places, and these are some of the things maybe I'd be showing my students. A recent graduate from the University of Dundee has repurposed yarn from campus into these beautiful interior kind of sound blocks for the walls. They've developed their own glue and binder, and just reimagining and starting to maybe imagine that in different contexts and different realities. But also this idea, and part of that material store came from, I suppose, Sandra's, I don't know if you can see them, recycling bins, which she's put not only on campus but in quite a large warehouse of knitwear based in Dundee as well. So starting to bring this outside of the university sphere, starting to collect from other places and starting to raise awareness, I suppose, of what what we could do with waste. This is another Dundee project. This is Draff, and they look at malt from breweries, and it's the kind of waste material that sometimes gets fed to animals, but they've looked at how to repurpose it into furniture. And again, I start to think about, cool, what happens after? So obviously it's got a wooden base there, which is maybe, biodegradable, etc. What are they? Is it resin they're putting it in? What's the kind of end of life, I suppose? And I think that's still something that I'm still exploring and trying to understand. A lot of my students have been looking at kind of patchworking materials together, because we do have a lot of boxes of opportunities. We've got lots of scraps across the campus already that are collected. These aren't my students, these are just examples of beautiful versions. Badabo, which is a streetwear company or designer, and Zero Waste Daniel, just looking at how you can make exquisite, beautiful things with waste materials. And another example from Useless. So these guys are based in Hanover, and I just really love this as an outfit made out of marathon t-shirts, and then they've also worked with the police to repurpose different police uniform and clothing. And I just think that's a really innovative way. And they had this great exhibition about it. So just another one to highlight. And then, for example, a student from Heriot Watt, Katie, who looked at repurposing yarn. And again, just how we can make something beautiful out of something that is classed as waste. Cool, way ahead of time, so that's great. So I suppose what I'm saying is this is definitely nowhere near ready for talking about fully, but I've gone for it anyway. And I'm going to call to action. I'd love to help, for you guys to help me answer, and also to work with you to answer research question 2, and how we repurpose this waste, how we come up with innovative solutions, how we make it a norm to pick from that box of possibilities versus that fabric store that you'd have to pay for and it's brand new. So I do have a cheeky wee QR code here, and that's just to sign up and share your details with me. And I'll hopefully be able to invite you to some workshops in the future. This is my sweetie shop of materials in its very early stages. I'm still collecting sweetie jars from around Scotland, which I need to wash out. They smell great, full of sugar. But the plan is to make this part of a larger exhibition, which will be happening next year, quite early. It's quite soon, January to March, where I'm working with another researcher, and we're looking to have sort of 5 metamorphosizing stages of an exhibition, where we start with polished pieces, we deconstruct those pieces, we create a library, a sweetie shop of materials, and we ask the public and researchers and students to come in and really speculate on how to use them and what we could use them for and what's next for those materials, but also to challenge the perception and understanding of what waste is. And it's very place-based, it's very local, it's for Galashiels, but the plan being that we can share that wider and we can kind of tour it a little, but also share that model and that kind of methodology with others. So yeah, I'm leaving it on a call to action, and thank you very much for listening.